Please welcome entrepreneurial, lifestyle expert, best-selling author, and mom of 3, Carley Roney, and moderator Kevin Maney, to the stage.
Aced it.
See if we pass our first test and actually sit on the right side.
I think we sat on the right side.
Yeah.
I know. We got
Okay.
the most critical piece of information for today was the way we were going to sit next to each other. We did it.
So, hi, Carley.
Hi. Hi. Thank you, sponsors. Thank you, all of you, for being here, and thank you, NYU Entrepreneur Institute. Right? It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. Well, so and speaking of, we're so far apart. That's better.
The video people are like,
oh yeah, they're like having a fit, right?
There we go.
It's like yelling across the campus. Right there. Yeah, there we go. Speaking of, let's get this on the table. You graduated from that factory of technology entrepreneurship, the NYU Film School.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. No, I'm a 2-time NYU certificate holder. Yes, I graduated from NYU Film School and then went back to performance studies, the department and degree that no one ever in the history forward will ever understand. But yeah, it was a very interesting pathway. Like, I didn't ever think I was going to be an entrepreneur, but the...
What did you think you were going to be? Let's start there. What was your path?
I'm already blushing because it's, the story gets, bad from the beginning. But I actually came to NYU with dreams, like many of us, of being an actress. So I came and went full on into the actual acting department for the first 2 years and was in the Playwrights Horizon studio, and then all of a sudden I moved. I was like, acting is great, but like directing is really like when you get to make the decisions. And then even there I was like, well, wait a second, there's not much funding for theater, and I like to be in the driver's seat. So then I moved over to film because I was like, acting's not going to work for me because I'm too bossy. And maybe directing, and then ultimately from there, when we got out of school, I also then realized that ultimately there's like very few jobs actually in film, and I ended up ultimately moving into making my own films, like documentaries, was sort of where I ended up. So I clearly from the beginning liked the kind of creation process. I liked to have my own vision and plan. I didn't like to be dependent on a tremendous amount of people.
So
okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
So is there? Where's the pivot? What's the link between that and deciding to go into business?
Oh, well, no jobs, right? That's always a good starting place. So actually, all right, so then I went back to, there were already no jobs. Then I went back to grad school because that's the best thing to do when you don't know what you're going to do with your life, right? So and then I went back to performance studies.
Who's doing that?
Yeah, that's right.
There we go.
I think you should just plan right now, just in case, and then it'll sound like a plan afterwards. No, so then we went back, and I went back to grad school, and I actually, I kid you not, the story all stories end at NYU. I went to like a cocktail party for a dean who had done me a favor. Is anyone here in the Scholars Program? Like, I was an NYU scholar, and a dean in the Scholars Program had done me a favor, so I went back. And I was like, it's a Christmas party, I have to go. She's done me a favor getting me into grad school. And I went, and we were doing vodka shots, because of course, she was a really nice dean. And then the guy next to me, I'm like, oh, I knew you when I was at NYU, and he was going back too. And long story short, I was married 6 months later. So it literally all roads lead to here, but he was into technology. He was in Gallatin. Was going back to school at Gallatin. So I was in performance studies, he was in Gallatin, and he was studying technology and filmmaking. It was like the early days of that. So he did some computer science and some business, and so he and I were gonna do a project together. It was really just a ruse to go out on a date, I have to admit. But I was gonna parlay what I was doing as my graduate program into some interactive art thing, I don't know, business. And so then we started a company together, right in the middle of school, because I had done, it's kind of a long-winded story, but it'll show you that your path is like this, coming out of school. I got a job in the middle of grad school to go do a project for the Smithsonian Institution. It was their first traveling exhibition, and I'd worked my way through college as a photo editor, finding pictures to be in books or magazines and things like that. And I got this job at the Smithsonian, and the sort of we did this entire project, and then David was like, they should make this into a CD-ROM. CD-ROMs, because you're all too young, CD-ROMs were like the precursors to websites. And
It's
so,
like, shh,
yeah,
oh,
I know, literally. I don't even want them to know, and I'm embarrassed that I admitted I
He's
know what
laughing,
they
right? I
are,
see that
right?
you're
Yeah,
laughing.
exactly. You and I both know they were hot. They were the thing. So we tricked basically the Smithsonian into giving us the rights to the world's first Smithsonian CD-ROM by basically saying to them, like, oh, you should make this into a CD-ROM. We know about those things because he was like taking classes at ITP. And so we kind of told them that we could do it, even though we didn't really know how to do it. And they said, oh, well, you could do it, but do you have the money to do it? And we were like, no, we thought you had the money to do it. And they were like, well, if you can, because the conversation got so confusing, they ended up saying, well, if you can find the money to do it, you can do it. And we were like, really? So then we went out and like found funding for this project, and that was sort of the inception. And we tricked somebody else into giving us a random number we pulled out of a hat. Literally, they took us out to dinner. We had found their name by going into the stores and like writing down the names. Oh, because by the way, there was no internet. Imagine founding a company with no internet. We like wrote their names on a piece of paper and like went and like wrote them, faxed them letters. And they came to New York and they said, well, how much money do you need for this? Now, here we are. Two people, never started a company before, never made a CD-ROM before. We were like, $100,000, like just because it was a round number. And they like wrote it on a napkin, all serious. I'm like, what are you, in the movies? They were like, $100,000, and they like gave us a date. And we said like, they said, sign here. And we were like, all right.
On the napkin.
Yeah, on the napkin. We're like, this binding document. And sort of that was really the kickoff of us. That was the money that we got to start our first company. And so we were really like a digital media production company when we started, right? We had this right. We made this CD. We hired all of our NYU friends, literally, that's what it was. We pulled everyone in that we knew from the computer science and people from ITP, and made this project, and it got bundled with the iMac by a miraculous thing. So it actually was like the one CD-ROM that sold millions. But in the work for hire, we hated that constantly selling, getting a new project. And so we said, what can we found that we can own? And two of our other NYU friends got together, and one knew someone at AOL, who had, AOL was like the dial-up service everyone used at the time to chat with people. Mm-hmm. And they knew someone, and they said, so the four people from film school started brainstorming ideas. And the funny thing is, in between, I had like a really horrible wedding, like the world's worst wedding. Everyone was like, this is pretty much the worst wedding we've ever been to, even including my parents. But we didn't care. We were so like madly in love. My parents were just convinced I was pregnant, right? Because remember, I got married within 6 months. I wasn't pregnant. Many years later, that's my daughter who was witnessing the embarrassment and now is really, really annoyed with me. The legacy carries on with a Gallatin student right there. And so the four of us sat together, and another person was like, oh, someone told me that like there's like gift registries and we could make this big business in weddings online. And I, who had like was living on the Lower East Side and had just gotten married, was like, ew, weddings are awful. Like, who would want to do that? And I basically was going to wear a black dress to my wedding. You can tell that I really should be America's wedding expert, right? So I said, no, weddings are awful. They're like outdated. It's impossible to find the information. Nobody, like the businesses don't, there's no transparency. And then we were like, oh, right. People spend a ton of money, and this industry is a disaster, and the best thing to change it will be technology. So the more we did the research, we were like, this would make an amazing business, because it's the young people who are early adopters of technology. You need to communicate a ton. You need to aggregate all these resources. So as we did the research, we thought, like, oh, this could actually be a real business. So we pitched AOL. We got a meeting with AOL, and
but
yeah, please. I'll just keep talking. You can tell.
No, but it was not obvious at that. I mean, so
yeah.
If I think back, like at that particular time, you're talking about like 1995, 96, right? At this time.
Yes.
And you're talking about, first of all, there were not a lot of women using
Yeah,
things like AOL, the
yeah.
internet, whatever. There were not websites that made their money on advertising. None of this, in a way, made sense at that particular time. So what made you believe that this was the right thing to do?
I mean, I wish that it was like and believe me, and if I'm telling the press the story, oh, right, I forgot you're the press. If I'm telling the press the story at the time, it was like a lightning bulb, right? Like, oh, we realized. It was kind of actually, we were looking at the categories that we thought, remember, this is brand new, it's total greenfield territory. And honestly, our first ideas were like music, sports, and then we were like, no, they're going to figure that out. Someone's going to figure out music and sports, and what can we do that there's going to be enough, what do you call that on the landing? Runway, thank you. But there's going to be enough runway, and it's going to go under enough radar that we could do it, because we don't have any ownership or expertise in any of these areas. So it really was like kind of by a process of like extrapolating and then researching all these different categories. And there were, so when we went to pitch AOL, we had like a big fancy pitch meeting, we made our deck, we don't even have a business plan, we basically have like an Excel spreadsheet and like a nice, set of slides. And we talked through the idea, like we were said, that this was an intense community driven, so much of the information is aggregated by word of mouth, and you need a ton of information. But our most important factor, and what we knew made it a good business, is that the minute you become engaged, you basically have, and on average, let's say at the time, it was like $25,000 to spend within a year and no idea how to do it. Right? And you're like, okay, people have money to spend on a deadline on something they've never done before. They're going to be driven to this new thing called the internet. They're going to need this information. It's not going to be like a nice to have. There were magazines at the time, obviously, but they were so useless because, I was getting married in a city I didn't know because I got married in DC. My husband's Chinese. I was getting married like on my own budget because once again, my parents were thrilled. I was getting married to a man they'd never met. And I was like, oh, this is exactly the storybook wedding that Brides Magazine has information on. Like, it wasn't real. But then I looked all around me and I'm like, wait, she's like marrying someone who's in a different religion, and and I looked around me, it's like everyone I knew was having this like not the classic American wedding, and it was kind of like zeitgeist, like this could really work. And, but you're right, there were no women on the internet. There was a lot of reasons why it shouldn't have worked. But it kind of like became the only answer we thought we could really win at, in a way.
So it was a process involved. It wasn't just like, I've got a great idea, let me go pitch this to somebody. There was actually a process involved in really thinking it through.
It was a process, and we sort of analyzed it in a lot of different ways. And we also thought that you could make money off of it really easily on advertising, because we did the research and found out that advertisers in the bridal category pay much more per head. There's only 2 million people who get married every year in America anyway, and they pay extraordinary high rates. And we were like, this is going to be really good, because since there's no one on the internet, they're going to need us to pay a lot. We're going to need them to pay a lot for those few people.
Right.
But it was funny, the business, by normal measures, was kind of a complete bad business plan. In fact, AOL, in the middle of our pitch, like we're all standing up there, they actually at one point looked up and they're like, this is the worst business we've ever heard of. You're like, well, there goes that drive to DC.
But you had, if I could, in that instance, and even when you were just talking about
you know the man who said this to me, too.
I do.
Yeah, Ted Leonsis,
Yes, I do. And he's a really, really nice man, so if he said that to you, he must have really thought it was terrible.
Yeah, really terrible. Meanwhile, he gave me the money, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, but if I listen to what you were just saying there, and what you were saying about the National Geographic situation, and
right.
and certainly addressing the people in this audience, I'm hearing a sense of I don't know, is it fearlessness? Is it just like stubbornness? What is it that it took to actually not just give up on those things?
Well, it's a funny, and I know one of your other questions on the list, so I'm going to jump ahead. No, but you know what? There was something in the dynamic of the four of us as founders that was very unique and really important to our success, right? And some of those are those things that you're talking about. So it was four people who, you know, I think because we were all film students, there's like inherent risk in the way we thought about what we would do with our lives. There was no idea that you're going to go out, you're going to get a job, you're going to have it for 10 years, you know, it's going to be easy. So we were people who were not risk averse to begin with. And once we kind of jumped off the cliff, because of the dynamic between the four of us, whenever anyone would falter, the other three would kind of turn and be like, no, no. So we had this, and we really had we're all in this together, we'll either go down in flames together or soar high together, and there was like some fun in it too, and, but we really, I mean, kind of overall, I just think we had, and I was saying this before, like, I just think we had more balls I mean, there were three boys, so there were a lot of balls, but besides me, but no, I mean, I think we had more chutzpah than one should really, like probably than one should have in a group of four people, and that just kept letting us lean forward. And actually was sort of looking back is really one of the secrets to the long-term success of the company is our constant willingness to risk new things. And you know, the founding, one of the key founding stories is, you know, AOL was like, in the end of the day, they decided it wasn't such a bad business, or they were desperate for content, I don't know what it was, but they were like, and they said it was a bad business because your audience churns 100% every year. And so we said, yes, normally that's a bad business, but when your advertisers want a new customer every year, they're not going to have a lifetime customer, then they want your audience to churn, and they pay a lot for them. And they were like, but what advertisers? And there was like, we're going to have advertising. And they were like, there's no advertising on AOL. There's no advertising on the internet. And we're like, that's our business model. And so they bought it. They gave us the $1.7 million. And but then we said, and we're going to call it The Knot, because it needs to be able to stand the test of time. It's not just about being like this website. We're going to have books and magazines, and we're going to build a whole brand platform. It's going to be different, and it's going to be wherever our audience needs information. And they were like, you know, The Knot's a really bad name. And we're like, well, what do you mean? They're like, well, you know, like in the list box on AOL, like they were like, you know, it's kind of like the equivalent of search, but in the list box, it's going to be listed under T. And no one's going to know what it is. They're going to think it's a sailing site or like a menswear site. And we were like, I know, but it's really important that people know we're different, that our voice and our brand, like that's what's going to attract our customers away from all the other players when they come into the space. And they actually were like, no, you really can't call it that. It's a terrible name. And we had done our focus group, which meant asking my 5 friends, and they all thought it was a great name. And so we all like went together too, and we said, well, what do you think we should call it? And they were like, Weddings Online. And we were like, so catchy. But we think we want to call it The Knot. And they were like, well, no, but we're the financiers, and we think you should call it this, and we're also the platform you're being launched on. And we were like, well, okay. And we basically like had a Mexican standoff with them, or game of chicken, I guess, because there weren't 3 people. But
and you were willing to not take the money if they were.
We just knew that it was critical, like, and that was it. But it was that kind of like we goaded each other on. We'd be like, yeah, we should just say no, and they'd be like, all right, we'll say no then. And then like someone's up there being like, actually no, and then all of a sudden they were like, oh, okay. And it happened a lot over the course of our time, was that sort of fearlessness. It was really critical to us. And I think, there just relentlessness. I mean, really sheer relentlessness. I tell all of you, I was just saying to someone, it's 75% of it is having more energy than the next guy. Waking up in the morning, and that was, I think, the other benefit of not being alone. Like someone was also always there I'm sure you talk about this in your book.
Yes.
He has an amazing book. He just gave me a gift copy. What's the name of your book?
Play Bigger.
Play Bigger. See?
Bigger. So you should all read that too.
Yeah.
But so did you? you got money from AOL and launched on the AOL platform. Did you
Yes.
actually did you also go out and seek other investors in venture money? When did you decide to do
Our
that?
second round was, so this was in 1996 that we got, in summer of 96 that we got our seed round, and then our Series A was from a West Coast venture capital firm called Hummer Winblad, who were like the hot, venture capitalists at the time. They'd never invested, they'd only invested in software at the time, and they wanted to get into content and media companies, and that was a whole new, I mean, honestly, AOL gave us the money and then was way busy with all their other issues. They had no interest. And then we had real venture capitalists who were like, okay, so we're gonna have XYZ board meetings. We were like, no, wait, you just give us the money and then we do what we want. And so then it became we lived the other life of someone, asking for numbers every, 5 minutes. So it was great. It was good rigor. But and they were hard, but they helped us negotiate with AOL. AOL had actually wanted 50% of our company for that $1.7 million based on some, and we didn't care, honestly. I mean, it wasn't the time. You didn't even know. There was no Entrepreneur Institute to turn to, and so.
And were you really figuring those things out on your own? Were you seeking other help? I mean, what would you tell if these folks are starting to go to try to raise some money?
Oh my God, it's just so different now. Yeah. There's everything. There's conferences. I mean, it really wasn't that way then. And so, you turn to the three people you knew, like a lawyer, a friend, and I mean, you reached out to professionals that you knew, or you knew other entrepreneurs at the time. You sort of reached out and met and it's really good to be open and share your information with one another. It is one of the most critical things, I think, because you're getting a pulse on where things are at a given moment, and you can really only rely on each other's real honesty, I think. But yeah, I wish there had been more resources at the time, and we made a ton of really extraordinary mistakes that we sort of got saved from. Turned out okay, but I mean, imagine if four of us had to split that other thing, we hadn't even had a second round of financing. Yeah. They got cut back to 20%, to 10% in the next round, so it all worked out okay.
So we're talking now in the 1990s, late 1990s, when everything is just going through the roof. Anything that has anything to do with the internet.com, whatever, right? And you decided to do an IPO. And talk. Just walk through that decision, because I mean, again, there's people in this room who are going to be facing that at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, I know. More power to it. It was interesting. So we had 3 rounds of funding. We had before our IPO, our seed, our Series A, our Series B, which was an investment from QVC, because they were a partner who helped us build out our warehouse. We took them as sort of a strategic. The venture capitalists never like you to take strategics, but we really liked the idea that we had a real expert in warehousing and fulfillment, so that because we got our round to build out this gift registry, because there was no online, there were a few sites who did online shopping, but none of them had a registry. Didn't matter, Crate and Barrel, Target, you couldn't buy anything on Target at the time. And we had an idea of an innovative way to do it, and so we got them as our partner, and then we went, and there wasn't really, there wasn't just extraordinary amounts of money that there are around now. And so going public was really the only way to have a big financing event. It was also the thing that everyone was doing. It was really all of that year, 1999, it was just everybody back to back was going public. And the process was, it's a lot of work. It's basically everything about being public is a ton of work from the very beginning, and you're in the banks and you don't know who you're going to trust, and really they're all the same. And it wasn't, I mean, it was exciting at the time, and but I think more about the things that happened afterwards and the difficulties of being a public company and how hard that was. Just to manage the culture of a company once you're public is very different. The dynamic changes. And so, we were one of the last companies really to go out before the internet, before the internet stocks went bust, before it crashed. Literally, we went out when the door, they say that the door hit us on our way up to up to ring the bell, because we went public on December 5th, 1999, and it was just all hell broke loose after that. Yeah, it was not pretty. And we didn't have a monster IPO. Our business is complicated. It didn't fit these, like, whatever, we rose up on the day, but we sort of say, and then over the course of that year, because of all the downward pressure on stocks, even though our performance numbers were going like this, our stock just started to go like this. And in a year and a half, just purely from the performance and the psychological state of the stock market, our stock was under $1. So we went out at $16, went up to $20 the first day, you know, like great IPO, made all the money we needed, and then it just became literally hell on earth. Your employees think, you know, you could be telling them, but nobody really, we didn't understand, no one had the understanding at that time. Like still, I mean, now I think we read about it in the newspaper all the time and IPOs and understand what those economies are, what it means to have options, but managing your children. And then the worst was managing your clients and your customers, because our competitors would do nasty little things. Oops, camera down. They would like fax our stock chart to our advertisers, like a magazine, the magazines at the time, or even other people would fax our stock chart and be like, look, they're going out of business. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand. So it was really a weapon that was used against us, and you know, the internal staff's, you know, options were underwater. So managing through that was really a very difficult time.
And it actually got to a point of being delisted from NASDAQ.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, we were delisted.
I wasn't supposed to mention that.
No, it's fine. No, I mean, it's actually one of the, it goes along with that. Like, so if you're, I don't know if anyone knows, if you're a public company and your stock goes goes under $1 for 90 days, you are delisted. And interestingly, there was actually, NASDAQ at the time had actually put kind of like a pause on that rule. But for some reason, like we were like a day outside of the window, or like, so we didn't fall inside. So we were ultimately delisted. And then to get relisted, you have to have your stock above $5 for 180 days. Okay, but like, how am I going to get my stock above $5? There's no trading on my stock. It's on the pink sheets. Nobody even knows who you are. So meanwhile, our metrics internally are growing. We're like really reaching profit. You could go public without being profitable in any way. So like we're reaching profitability. Like everything is going the right direction, but the mood is bad because there are stocks. So you're managing a lot of that. We ultimately had a great partnership with Allen & Company, who's a great bank, and they like did some. They looked at the business metrics. They're like, this is a great business. Why are you on the pink sheets? We had more cash in the bank than we had value on the stock market. Like literally, you could have taken us out with our own money. You could have bought us. I mean, it was really, and so when people started to see that we were turning out a lot of cash as well, they got, you know, a couple of funds to basically come in, and you know, Allen Company became the market maker for us and brought us back up, and we got relisted. And
well, again, you know, you could have had a lot of options there, right? You could have sold the company. You could have. There's a lot of things you did. What?
Someone offered us $1 once, $1 per share.
Seriously?
We were like, and it was the same thing as the weddings online. We're like, no, thank you.
Yeah. But you were determined. I mean, again, you know, they had. This,
it was a great
sense
business.
Of, yeah.
Like it was a really good business, and that's why, I mean, like beyond relentlessness, like an extraordinary amount of optimism and fortitude, like you have to continually believe, because if you listen, there's so much around you, but we could tell, we knew where the metrics were going. You know, we also were like gaining market share at extraordinary rates. Like during this time, my introduction says something like, during this time we had like 3 summers of 10 straight weeks on the Today Show. Like everyone in America knew who the Knot was. Oprah had us on multiple times. It just became like, we literally got 8 out of 10 people in the country. We had to just wait, honestly, for a lot of the internet adoption to catch up. So like one of our great dreams was to build this online gift registry, right? We're gonna curate the products for you, make it easy. It's a real nightmare to register for gifts. Who's registered for gifts? It's like you're wandering around a store and you're picking, you don't even, is this coffee maker or this coffee maker? So we did all these curated lists, and you took a quiz, and we told you it was great about them, and we made all these like feature sets around it. We got more couples to register on our site with our quiz, and like they were so unbelievably pleased with their registry lists. We were like, oh my God, we are a $1 billion company. Home freaking run. The guests were like, shop on the internet. So the importance of a gift registry is I choose the gifts, I tell you where to buy them. You buy them. So I only have to market to one customer to sell $2,000 worth of products, like the best e-commerce like in the world. But the moms and the aunts, they were like, I'm not putting my credit card in that thing. Who knows who can get it from there? And our timing was just literally 4 years too early.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, and like that one, I mean, in the end of the day, we have an amazing business. We, whatever, we had to pivot. So I had like multiple startups inside my startup, but constantly pivoting. Okay, if this is gonna work, if we can't wait this out, because couples are disappointed. They're like, I made this amazing lift, and everyone's buying me those same owl salt and pepper shakers I never wanted in the first place, because they couldn't find any. And so, that sort of constant, I forget why I was saying that, like your timing can be off really badly, but we still knew like there's a ton of money there, you just gotta keep working at those problems, and that's what every entrepreneur in the room is doing, right? You start with a beta of something, keep pivoting, oh wait, maybe not that. So we ended up, okay, we need real world partners, because people need to see the brands. We need to push our list, and we got partners to take our list of even our internal products and put them on theirs. So then people could buy in store, because grandma still wanted to go to the store. And so we just kept pivoting until it became a real business.
So let me interject in the timeline kind of thing, something about you. So first of all, you had 4 founders, partners.
Yes.
And let me start with this question: Is how did you end up being?
looking at me like, what were there?
How did you end up being the CEO?
I was not the CEO.
You were not the CEO.
No, I'm not the CEO, although I really was. No. David, we actually, it's very funny. Havana's like, no, David is, David's my husband.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people think and I'm sure that is just like so annoying to him. And we had a decision, the 4 of us around the table, and it is one of the trickiest things about having 4 founders in a company is to like figure out the power dynamics as your company grows and changes. But we realized, like in the dividing and conquering thing, that he was going to be better at. Like, there was plenty of us to go around, right? You didn't have to pick someone to do all the jobs. And I was going to be able to handle all the consumer side of the business, product development, like I handled everything, product marketing, largely because I handled product-directed tech. And he would handle the, he had more of the business background. He had run, I knew that they would trust him more as CEO, and then like other people, one became the head of business development and sales. So we sort of divided up in that way. But it was an interesting dynamic. It's a great partnership when it's good, and we always say, and like the worst possible thing on the planet to be married to your co-founder / CEO when it's not going well. Because what is the best thing? People who have jobs, what's the best thing about going home after a shitty day at the office? Complaining and letting the other person be like, that sounds so awful. Oh my God, that guy's an asshole, right? But the asshole was like sitting across the table from me. And so there's like no one, so it's a real challenge. I mean, it was an extraordinary competitive advantage, also because it was total mind meld. We had a complete shared of the strategy, sense of the strategy of the business, working all the time. And I would say overall, also, we were not a terribly hierarchical relation, like a company, even between the 4 founders. We always all made all decisions, with the equal weight. Even after David became the CEO, it was very much based on their like needing to be particularly going public. There was no choice to have a single voice at the table. I mean, there were plenty of sticky times when you bring in the grown-ups and the CFO, and there was tons of power struggles. And challenges. It's very difficult to it's really difficult to grow a freaking company.
Well, so along those lines, though, now, again, for these people in the room is that so there's one skill set when you're deciding to start a company and you're looking for the idea and you're trying to sell this idea and all. You're being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And in the timeline we're talking about in your company, we've gotten to a point now where things are really complex, right?
Yeah.
2000, 2001, whatever. How did you and David, acquire those skills to be able to manage that? Was it something that evolved? Was it something you didn't know you had in you that came, bubbled up when things started to go that way?
No, it's a good question. I think you just honestly kind of muddle along. We're also extremely curious and, as I said, kind of relentless people. So, and there wasn't a lot of there was a lot of chutzpah in us, but not a lot of hubris. I'd say honestly, all of these things are managing people. Like really growing a company is trying to develop a team and culture, and that was something I had never managed anyone even before I started this company. Literally not at all. And he had some previous work experience that led him to manage a big team. But I think that what drove us to really keep learning more and doing it right was also a deep love of the business and the right sense of the mission. We were not in this to get rich quick. We were not in this to IPO or to cash out. I only recently stopped going to work every day. It's 20 years. Who stays with their company that they found for 20 years? And a lot of it was we loved these people. We felt like we had, our culture was so extraordinarily important to us. We really had this really shared sense of purpose with them. We wanted to build a great company where people wanted to work, where there was a great balance between what the, really listening to the customer and, particularly in a media company and not letting we were rebalancing the power between the customer and the advertiser, let's say. We really had this sense of mission. And so it really drove us to always want to do the right thing and to work really hard to do it. So learning, honestly, a lot of it was trial and error. We did have some grown-ups who joined who tried to coach us, and I was their advice was horrible and oldfashioned, honestly. The management advice I got from the woman who joined, who was 25 years older than me, was basically just tell them to shut up. And I was not literally, but in some ways it was more, and so we were kind of, I think, finding our way to a new form of management where it was much more about a less hierarchical organization, everything that's kind of normal now, but this is 20 years ago, of young people in a less hierarchical organization trying to have as much transparency as possible, to be pushing power down, to be hiring people on attitude, over experience. And those things kind of led you to figure out the answer on how to encourage, most of what it is right, is giving people a sense of passion to do great work every day when they come in. That's really the job. The technology is running around you and you need smart people to do it, but that's the job of building a company. And I think honestly that came from, some desperation. The other thing was we founded the company, all these people work here now, and we told people we were going to do this, so we can't fail. And by the way, we're unemployable, so we can't fail. And also we can't get divorced because we're a company about marriage. So we're just kind of stuck here trying to make this work.
So let me ask you one other thing about you, and at the same time tell everyone in the room that right after she answers this question that we'll take Q&A. So if you can go to these microphones, I think, is that right, Ramya? So the go to the microphones. So what is it?
Yes.
To vault this forward is so you just mentioned you recently stopped going to work every day.
It was so awesome. I don't know why I didn't think of it 10 years ago. Yeah.
But so what are your plans? If you're stepping away from this after 20 years, I know you just worked a lot on Hillary's campaign. Is it politics? Where are you heading?
Well, I was very much inspired to kind of wrap up my day job at the campaign when Hillary decided to run for president. Yeah, I was really passionate about that. Largely because I became very much over the years inspired by the idea of women in leadership roles and women as entrepreneurs and founders. And so I spent a lot of whatever time I wasn't, in the office or being a mom to my 3 babies, I wanted to put towards women. So I'm on the board of Rent the Runway, a company founded by women. I advise a lot of companies founded by women. And so I just wanted to and I've continued that work after. So I just figured the best way to inspire women's leadership was to have a lady president, a badass lady president. So we'll have to wait a little while on that one. But even her running, I think, has put a lot of people in politics in particular. I think that women, many young people, but in particular women, because that's my interest, don't exercise their political power. They don't really know a lot about what power they ultimately have, and I think that's something I'm spending some time on too, making sure that people, one, are just exercising the power they have in their day, while they're doing it, not just by being great leaders at work, which is where people turn to, and I think that's a great achievement, but we also need to do it in the outside world. And I'm also continuing to support a lot of entrepreneurs. I just spent the day at a startup that is in Brownsville, New York, working with doing parent coaching in New York City's poorest community, but they're a startup and they need to be thinking like a startup, and so I work with them. As I said, I'm on the board, and I do a lot of things around that arena because I think that this is I had such an extraordinary career. There was interesting every single day. And I had amazing people who worked for me and went off and started on their own companies. I just feel like this is my period to give back. So much was given to me by the community around me. And so I need to I didn't realize I had all this knowledge until I started working with people. They have questions. I'm like, well, I know how to solve that problem, or at least give you some stories to help you. So that's a lot of what I'm doing. And
let's listen to a question.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Marcela.
Hey, Marcela.
First of all, thank you for being here and being a badass woman leader yourself.
Thank you.
Clap, clap, clap. Thank you. So my question is, I have a lot of friends who are in the process of getting married, and just like you were speaking of the registry issue coming up and how people were hesitant to do it online back in the day, what I'm finding today is that a lot of couples are sort of saying, you can get us a gift or you can help us out with our home purchase or our honeymoon funding. And that's a little more acceptable today, but when I tell the older generations, they're just horrified and flabbergasted that anyone would even have the audacity to ask for money in that capacity. So are you finding, and I'm kind of in the middle, I can see both sides, but I understand why that's more of a need today than it was before. So is your website, dealing with this trend, and how are ways to talk to people about that?
That's a great question. You can imagine how they felt about it in 2001 when we first launched the idea of cash gifting to help you with your honeymoon and whatever. These things, the couples were like, and the parents were like, this is not acceptable.
Right.
I know, we were all about the bride and groom. These dynamic, what we usually end up saying to people is right now you're splitting things between your peer group and your parents, right? Your peer group are the ones who are going to support you on your missions, and a lot of it's also cultural. If you are Italian or if you are Chinese or nobody's they were a gift, what would be the point? But so I think a lot of it's just making sure you're marketing whatever that service, but we do provide that service, yes, but more and more adoption across the board. Also, people don't want to have to sit and decide what to actually get you on your registry. That's too much. Honestly, think about it. We're all about reducing friction in this life. Now buying a gift, looking for the gifts is annoying to people. Never mind. So I think that cash is going to just increasingly becoming of course, it's just easier. They're going to Venmo you your wedding gift. Actually, you're not. You're going to do it through the knot, so I get to take my toll, right?
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Come to the microphone so we can hear you.
My name is Ken. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Ken.
Everyone here. This is beautiful. My question to you is over the past 20 years, business and everything has just been going oh, I want everything to be easier. And now this is easy. I want this to be easier. And now I want this to be easier. It's easier to look for gifts. You don't want to take the time to look for a right gift for, she's getting married, bro. Why, where is that going to head to in 10 years? Or everything's just easy, so easy. It's too hard to pee. Let's make an app for that.
Now there's an area for invention. Somebody take that one up.
It's your next
Entrepreneur, that's right. I think that one of the things you also I had this company for 20 years, so I've watched these trends go back and forth too, where people, if you just think any kind of trend, right? Things go, and if you look in sort of e-commerce, even just as its own right, things go towards I want the fastest, cheapest way to get something, and then it whips itself back, and it's I want the most personalized, crafted, beautiful, like hand version of way to get something. Like things go back and forth, I think, what people want. And part of it is just like knowing where you sit in that, spectrum and making sure that you're paying attention to what the current, and listening to your customer base. Like if my customer base says, yeah, actually, it's really annoying for me to pick out a gift, like I need to provide that service for them whether unless it goes against my kind of like mission and values as a company. But it's not that hard for me to have essentially sort by price. Like you solve it, and all these things, you listen to the requests out there, you listen to what your research shows you from what your customers want, and you figure out what the translation is into something that satisfies them. But you don't pull out there like, don't give a shit what you get her,
No,
Here.
I wasn't trying to offend you. I was just saying,
No,
like,
I
is
know.
it like you're like placing the serving the customer base and like finding the need over like. Is it too much? Is it going into certain? Is it like too much change? Like, because you did say snapback. That's like.
Well, you know what? I do think like it's very funny now. So I no longer run the product team at the company, and I'm watching. The product team is telling me what they're going to do, and they're. My belief is, they said the customer tells us they really only want to do one thing at a time. So we're going to take this screen, a screen where we were like, you can come in today, you can like look at dresses, you can do this hard work of like picking out, your florist and thinking about budgets, or you could do this thing, like multiple choices. And they're saying, no, but she says she only wants to do one thing at a time, and she wants it really simplified. Now, as an experienced product person who's watched the history of that over time, I can tell you that she says that she wants that. But if she comes in and the thing you're offering her to do, you've made it simple, you've said there's just one thing to do, if that's not what they want to do, they're going to want an alternative, or they're going to leave, right? So I think that you have to be careful to like listen to what your customers are saying and like sometimes translate for them. I think you have to also use some of your own instincts, and your business goals come in there some too. It's not one or the other. You really have to kind of be balancing and finding the kind of happiest medium. Because otherwise, everyone also wants everything to be free.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would say about like, so we have a free, really easy to use everything. So anyway.
Yeah. Thanks for the question.
Do you have a?
No, and we'll take one last question. I was just going to say, that is a bit of the sort of the Steve Jobs thing of people don't always know what they want.
That's
and sometimes you have to actually guide them there.
Yeah, and I think it's an ongoing debate, I think, between.
But let's do I think one last question, because there's a happy hour waiting for all of us here. So
Thank God, I thought they were going to bring happy hour. We were going to call
we were going to
Drinks
call
with Kevin and Carley. But
I know. We should have ordered delivery.
I know, that's right. Where's the one quick?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Carley. I'm Jake. I'd like to thank you. You were really engaging and also informative, and I'm sure that's quite a
Well,
change.
this time of night, I know you just want to drink, so I have to be a little funny, because otherwise you're like,
I
but
assume
thank
your
you, I
daughter's used
appreciate
to
the
it.
feedback, yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to go back 20 years to when you pitched AOL, and it was probably different during the dot-com era than it is today, but how do you pitch and receive funding of $1.7 million for an idea in which you don't have experience, whether that's with wedding registries or running a business? So what did that look like then? And
I know, we thought the same. It is a good, we had done our homework. Like, there wasn't anyone else pitching them, I don't think, who might have done it. And we just considered it, all right, let me just go back. We made it an advantage that we did not have experience. Right, that's what it is. You take your disadvantage and you figure out how to turn it into an advantage. We said this industry is completely ripe for disruption, and everyone in the industry wants it to stay exactly how it is, because not a single one of them is actually focused on the customer. And we come from the background of listening to the customer, and we said and we had someone who was we did have someone who was an expert in advertising, so we proposed a business model, and we knew our stuff in terms of, we had done really hardcore research. We knew exactly what, Vital Magazine advertising was sold for. And so we felt solid. And it was, remember, like you were saying, it was completely greenfield territory. Nobody had any models anyway. So all they were really looking for someone to do, and believe me, I had enough editorial background. The internet then was largely just editorial. Like it's like we're sounding like it was some amazing e-commerce platform. Like all you could do on the internet was like read things and chat. And so there wasn't really I needed like a master's in chat to like manage a chat room. So in a way, they didn't really care that much. They just wanted us to build a great area. And I think that, and even when I'm deciding who I want to invest in or who I want to be on boards of, I'm looking at those people, and it's not necessarily about their experience. I want to say, like, can these people problem solve? Are these people smart enough and relentless enough to go after those problems and solve it? Unless, of course, if it's like, some type of like mechanical engineering, right? But then you could even just say you're hiring those people. So I think that was our pitch. It's like, it's about that our attitude is different than anyone who would have had experience. And you want us, because we're like, relentless and we're going to make this thing work. And we have a different point of view, I think. But you're right. I mean, that was the big risk going in there. But it's funny because to be an entrepreneur, you just have to like do your homework but quiet those voices in your mind because anyone else was starting up. And believe me, there were plenty of times afterwards since then. Naivete is so powerful and such an important piece of being an entrepreneur. And the more you know, the less risk averse you become. And I remember I was talking, so at one point during this, one of the things we did is we made wedding websites, like auto-make wedding websites. Like you put in something, you add a picture. We basically made Squarespace. But we did it because we wanted brides to have like invitations on the internet and places they could get RSVP. So we made a combination of paperless posts and Squarespace. And at one point we were like, should we just make this is amazing to make these websites, and everyone's websites are so bad on the internet, and we've made these things that are like easy to build website platforms, we should do that. We sent someone off, they did the research, and they were like, actually, there are many players in this space. This was in 2002. There were no players in this space. There was like the Yellow Pages had a button you could click to make yourself a website. And we listened to all the research from the great analysts who had gone to business school, who told us about the competitive thing, and we were like, yeah, it sounds like that's too hard a business to to get into and pivot to. And I look back now, and I was like, that was a great business. And it took 10 years for someone to start that business really in any big way. And the fact that, like starting it now with Squarespace and Wix, and there's so much opportunity. Same with a lot of things. So like the farther you go along, the more you hear yourself know what you don't know. But, don't think about that, because you need to not be thinking about what you don't know right now. The country is depending on it.
We'll leave them with that advice.
Okay,
So
yeah,
just
go out and conquer,
wallow in
people.
your ignorance.